With this epigenetics and epigenome class, this is one of the most important subject matters in biology right now, and it's something that students still are not getting taught about. The reason that nutrition, supplementation, and diet and exercise, the reason those things make a difference, the reason they matter in a positive way if you do them properly, and the reason they matter in a negative way if you don't do them properly, is all of those things affect our epigenome. And our epigenome could easily be looked at as being more important than our actual genome itself. So the epigenome is a level, if you want to think about it, a level above the DNA. So 99.9% of all human DNA is the same. My brother and I have 99.9% similar DNA. Me and some dude living over in Mongolia have 99.9% the same DNA. There's only 0.1% of our DNA that tends to be sometimes different from individual to individual, but the vast majority of the phenotypic variation, or the variation in what you see, like how tall somebody is, what color eyes they have, those are not because that person has a gene for green eyes and another person doesn't have a gene for green eyes. It's because one person's gene for green eyes is being expressed in a way that results in them actually having green eyes. Everybody has the gene to produce green eyes, or the combination of genes to produce green eyes. It's just that not everybody has those combination of genes turned on and off, or partially turned on or partially turned off in a certain way. It's the way that the genes are expressed is how we get the vast overwhelming majority of variation between people. We all have the same genes. If you just want to kind of simplify it, and again, we're just scratching the surface on understanding of this stuff, but we all have the same genes, more or less. If you just want to think about it, everybody's got the same genes. All of the differences in IQ and height and mental aptitude, all this stuff, all of those differences are the result of those same base set of genes being expressed in different ways. So that is what, more or less, what the epigenome is. It's changes to the actual double helix structure of the DNA itself. It doesn't change the code. It puts molecules or takes molecules on or off of the actual double helix of DNA itself. So if you can picture the double helix, if you attach little molecules onto the outside of it, that is what affects which genes get unraveled to be read and re-raveled and all that stuff. So we're going to go over all this stuff in depth, you guys. It's super, super cool. I've spent hundreds and hundreds of hours going through all the most up-to-date research, listening to podcasts from medical doctors, talking to people, and I've spent a lot of time putting all this stuff together for you guys because, again, it's not something that any medical person gets taught in school unless you're a dietitian or a nutritionist. Medical doctors, osteopaths, doctors of physical therapy, chiropractors. I just taught a bunch of osteopaths and chiropractors and physical therapists and athletic trainers last weekend in Houston. A bunch of them were recently out of school, you guys. I ask every single class this question. Maybe 5% of people that I teach have some inkling of what the epigenome is, and almost 0% of people that I teach, and this is including regular doctors, you guys, almost 0% of the people that I teach have any idea what the epigenome is, how it affects us, and stuff like that. This is just fascinating stuff to me. It's really, really important to know, and if you do know this stuff, you can take your health into your own hands and be responsible for your own health, so you don't have to rely on somebody that most likely doesn't care about you at all to do the best thing for you, which almost never happens in mainstream medicine nowadays, unfortunately. In this class, we're going to talk about the epigenome, what it is, how it works, what we can do about it, because we can specifically and significantly modify our epigenome. Really, really cool. So we'll get into that. We'll get into how doing that helps improve health, or how not optimally paying attention to your epigenome can lead to health degradation. We'll talk about the DNA structure itself. So this is something that I think most people learn in like 8th and 9th grade, but it's not really heavily touched upon after that. It's relatively briefly touched upon in medical schools, you guys. I know when I was going through my doctorate degree program in physical therapy, it was just relatively briefly touched on. Methylation, what that is, how that affects our vitamin uptake and stuff like that, what unmethylated unmetabolized folic acid is, which is basically unmethylated folic acid. So there's something called unmetabolized folic acid syndrome. FYI, folic acid is put in every single non-organic grain in the United States. At least 50% of the United States population has a gene anomaly that basically makes it impossible for us to methylate folic acid into 5-methyl tetrahydrofolate, which is the usable form. So that means that right off the bat, 50% of the United States, any non-organic grain that they're eating, they are eating poison for their body. And folic acid is poison for 100% of human beings because it's not found anywhere on the planet, and it's not a natural substance. So we'll get into that. And then we're going to talk about some longevity genes and proteins, like the sirtuins. There's 7 sirtuins, telomerase, telomeres, the things on the little caps on the end of our chromosomes. Those are what improve cellular health span and lifespan. We're going to talk about the Hayflick limit, what that is, mTOR complex 1 and 2, and AMPK. And then all of this stuff, you guys, is extremely important to understand to optimally grasp all of the other nutrition and supplementation and peptide classes that we have. So the peptide class, the reason that peptides work is the same reason that nutrition and supplementation works, if you do it properly, is that it positively affects the epigenome, which alters the way that our underlying DNA code gets read, and that can change the way that it can change our health. And another crazy thing about this, you guys, and again, we'll get into this, but the epigenome, so things that you do throughout your life, if you exercise consistently and eat well, your genome or your specific DNA is going to be tagged in a way that leads to you being healthier. And those tags on the DNA, not all of them, but a good amount of them are passed on from parents to children. So all of them are passed on, or almost all of them are passed on from cell to cell. And again, we're just scratching the surface on this. This is the most up-to-date understanding that I'm aware of. So most of the epigenome, the epigenetic marks get passed on from cell to cell when the cells replicate, and most cells in the body can only replicate a certain time, and then they die and they get gobbled up and new cells get formed. If the epigenome is out of whack, those cells and their ability to replicate and their ability to be healthy is going to be compromised, which is going to lead to degradation of health in all ways, shapes, and forms, including mental and physical health. So we're going to get into all of that. Really cool stuff.